So, to start us off, I have the great privilege and pleasure of introducing Angela Lindner, who's an associate professor in the Department of Engineering Education at the University of Florida. Angela has over 36 years of experience in higher education as a graduate student, faculty member, and college and university level administrator. She has a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the College of Charleston in South Carolina, a master's degree in chemical engineering from Texas A&M University, and a PhD in environmental engineering from the University of Michigan. She began her role in the faculty at the University of Florida in 1998 when she was hired to teach and do research in her two areas of focus, bioremediation and green engineering. In 2008, she shifted her focus to college administration, serving as Associate Dean for Student Affairs in the College of Engineering until 2015, when she transitioned to university-level administration as Associate Provost for Undergraduate Affairs. She's currently serving as a faculty member in the Department of Engineering Education with a focus on student well-being and success, sustainable engineering education, and humanities, arts, and engineering collaboration. Angela has been a driving force behind the University of Florida's QUEST program, which is a comprehensive general education program spanning all 4 years of undergraduate study. And she firmly believes, quote, "Students are not something to be tolerated so that we can do our thing. They are our thing." Angela, please come up to the podium.
Okay, good. Just checking the technology. Well, thank you, Keith, very much for your kind introduction. I'm so grateful. And before I begin, I want to take just a few seconds to thank Keith, you, and Rick for your unflagging encouragement you've provided us at University of Florida this past year. Very much needed. I am deeply grateful for that. I'm also grateful for this generous invitation to be able to present today, especially since the University of Florida is a relatively new member of the coalition. But I'm honored to be with you all here today. As I described to participants in the coalition's leadership meeting in Chicago in the fall, I first learned about the work of the coalition. It was one Friday evening, my drive home from campus. After a long week, I was listening to the Inside Higher Education podcast, The Key. As most of you have probably already heard, in this particular episode, Doug Lederman was interviewing Rick. My out loud response in my car when I heard Rick describe the mission of the coalition that evening was, "Coalition, where have you been all my life?" My hope is that the story I share today of UF Quest, its history, its status, its future, galvanizes in each of us the conviction that the work of all in this coalition is of utmost importance today in the rapidly changing landscape of higher education that is complicated by increased negative scrutiny, whether unjustified, justified, or both, coming from just about every direction, it seems. I also want to thank each of you in this room, your institutions, for taking what can be considered in many regions of this country a courageous step to further the mission of the coalition, which is worth repeating as often as we can. That every student graduates not only with a degree, but also with a transforming educational experience that roots them in well-being and work engagement for their lifetime. So I begin in full transparency. First, since January 4th, I no longer serve as Associate Provost for Undergraduate Affairs at UF, as originally listed on the agenda for this conference. I'm transitioning back to the engineering faculty at UF. Now, if you ask Luke, my husband Jim's and my precocious 7-year-old neighbor, my shift in roles is a demotion. He just informed me that. You've been demoted. But if you ask me, after this 2.5 months or so of transitioning back into faculty, it's more of a downward promotion as I return to my first loves of research and teaching and get my hands dirty in my garden every day. I have time to do certain things and to ponder and reflect a little bit more. I began the associate provost role in 2015 with one of the expectations to lead development of a general education core program that eventually sprouted into UF Quest. So secondly, in full transparency, the UF Quest program is somewhat in jeopardy today, and I wanted to make that very clear. However, amid this uncertain landscape, we at UF, after over 8+ years of necessary and productive tension of planting seeds, nurturing them, watching the Quest program sprout and grow, are in the unique place of determinedly living the program forward as it continues to expand while also understanding it backward, borrowing from the philosopher Soren Kierkegaard. As I shift away from the role of master gardener of sorts back into my backyard gardening of this program, I am coming to better understand that there is a grander capital S story within the little s story of UF Quest. My goal in this time together is to begin by telling the little s story of UF Quest, how it came to be, what it is today, where we hope it will be for years to come, and to provide commentary on the lessons we learned along the way in the event your institution is desiring to embark on work of this scale, if it's not already doing so. You may find helpful a handout I've prepared for your campus teams that includes provoking questions based on our experience and lessons learned so far at UF, and it's in the folder provided you. Today, I will not give the full accounting of the often arduous and inspiring steps of the journey we've taken to build the program. Now, that accounting is available on our UF Quest website and from our expert Quest faculty and staff leaders and students, some of whom who are here today, and we'll all be standing by our poster at the 4:30 reception, and so please stop by. We'd love to talk to you more about the program. I hope to conclude this presentation, however, by sharing the grander capital S story within the little s story that the UF program itself is narrating for us. Compared to the little s story, the capital S story, the big story, is perennial and even more relevant to the great work of the coalition, I believe, giving us all hope as we face the rapid change in the higher education landscape. And I call this grander story a pursuit of hopefulness. So let me dig in. First, I'll briefly describe the UF Quest program so that you have a sense of what I'm talking about when I describe how we came to shape it. From the beginning, I made the argument to campus that this program was designed to honor our UF classical general education tradition. This tradition of UF general education has been described in a UF undergraduate catalog from many decades ago as, quote, postponing the choice of professional work until the student knows better his capacity and disposition to undertake work that will be profitable to himself and society, avoiding the handicap of narrow specialization. I cannot think of a better way to describe the aspirations for our UF Quest program, sexist language notwithstanding. They didn't know any better back then. As we'd say in South Carolina, bless their hearts. Yet, the UF Quest model also answers the need to move beyond the ashes of our tradition in order to keep alive the fire of learning for the generations of students today and those to follow in this significantly more complex world that they must navigate. This is a need that Austrian composer and musician Gustav Mahler emphasized in the late 19th, early 20th century about his own discipline of music. Breaking from the tradition of consolidating general education into the first 2 years, at a program level, UF Quest is considered a year 1 through year 4 sequence of curricular experiences that contribute toward general education and major specific requirements, and accompany incoming cohorts of first-time in college students. We refer to them at UF as FTIC students, first-time in college students, as they mature and grow. Woven together into one tapestry, UF Quest components were designed to pluck students from their black and white worlds of high school and, with close relationships with faculty, be prepared to tackle the rigor of college and the challenges of life with sparked intellectual curiosity and joy of lifelong learning. Through care-filled guidance of their humanities faculty in their Quest 1 Year 1 course, students are first gathered across majors and shepherded into the grayness of the eternal, often unanswerable questions of the humanities. After experiencing this low-risk destabilization that must always be part and parcel of an excellent education, they pursue a UF Quest 2 Year 2 course that hovers over wicked questions of the natural or social sciences, questions that have answers, but require the resolve of many disciplines coming together to seek and implement solutions. Along the way, students are required to reflect on their possible role in contributing to the solutions of these wicked problems, to enhance their analytical skills, and to engage in embedded experiential learning activities to prepare them for the next stage of the program, UF Quest 3. As of 2021, all incoming FTI students, and we target about 6,500 to 7,000 a year at University of Florida, have been under the Quest 1 and Quest 2 requirements. UF Quest 3, anticipated to launch in 2027, will thread the required experiential learning components of Quest 1 and 2 courses by sending the students out into the world to try on for size what they have learned. As they continue to ask questions, reflect, and envision themselves out in the world as a Gator who lives with and for other people, as our UF ancestors imagined and published in another early UF undergraduate catalog. Finally, students return to campus and engage in UF Quest 4, a discipline-rooted, faculty-driven capstone course that allows them to synthesize all their learning in a semester-long practical project that prepares to launch them into the world, hopefully broadly educated, comfortable asking and living difficult questions, and with a fuller awareness of their capacity and disposition to undertake the specific life work they have chosen. Perhaps our UF graphic arts students captured the spirit of the growth model of UF Quest the best in their design of the program's logo and icons, which you see here. In their words, UF Quest 1's icon is represented by the water we wade through before we embark on our path, the waves being a symbol of life, not always going smoothly, and the obstacles we may face. UF Quest 2 icon depicts a nature trail, a symbol of guided exploration that leads to the sun, which is representative of student goals. The UF Quest 3 icon is designed as it uses the tree as representation of the full transition from the water to land as students explore and engage in the world beyond the classroom. Finally, UF Quest 4 is represented by the sun that shines through the clouds, a symbol of emerging hope and the goals students aspire to reach. You can only imagine my utter amazement and awe the day they unveiled their class project in designing these graphics for our program. The Quest program is grounded in engaging students in questions that are difficult to answer, but impossible to ignore, and ultimately expecting that they fearlessly ask and live these questions forward as curious, caring, moral, responsible, and thoughtful citizens in the world, as described in both our ancient and current university catalogs. This education, by leading with questions, is rooted in the sentiment expressed by historian and political philosopher Hannah Arendt that we have carried with us since the conception of the UF Quest program in 2015. If humans were ever to lose the appetite for meaning we call thinking and cease to ask unanswerable questions, they would lose not only the ability to produce those thought things, but also the capacity to ask all answerable questions upon which every civilization is founded. In other words, by providing a timeless space for students to question, ponder, learn, and dare I say, love, UF Quest was designed to honor both our UF tradition and our commitment to provide a relevant education to today's students, thus preparing them to tackle today's unanswerable and answerable questions they will live forward. Even though I believe UF was born in 1853 to offer UF Quest, this program came into being by completion of specific milestones, not necessarily originally intended to connect with each other, much less lead to UF Quest. Thanks to the foresight of a previous generation of leaders, fully supported by our state legislature at that time, the university made a series of fortuitous decisions in more recent history, some of which I show here, that provided early guideposts to make the program possible. I'll touch on some of these decisions leading up to 2015. First, UF convened an undergraduate education task force to reevaluate the undergraduate educational experience and offer recommendations in a 2010 report which called for the following aspirations: the creation of themed signature experiences for FTIC students, an increase in academic experiential learning, service learning, and civic engagement opportunities, and the development of e-portfolio initiatives. The following year, the core course, What is the Good Life?, was piloted and then approved by UF Faculty Senate and UF General Education task forces as a mandated signature course for all FTIC students, starting in 2012. Now, in that year, we hired the Good Life course director, and state preeminence legislation allowed preeminent state institutions, UF qualifying as one of them, to offer 9 to 12 additional credit hours of unique courses. In 2013, then President Bernard Machen released a call for Grand Challenges core courses in the natural and social sciences, and 2 proposals, a natural science course called The Challenge of Climate Change, and a social science course, An Informed Life, People, and Data, were selected to be Grand Challenges core courses, joining What is the Good Life to total to 9 additional required credit hours for all FTIC UF students. These 2 new courses were piloted in 2015. So, as you consider the programs you have launched or desire to launch at your institution, I ask you to consider the likelihood that they are a result of the sowing of seeds by countless dedicated individuals who preceded you, as was the case for us at University of Florida. So such was the landscape of our university when I entered the stage as associate provost in 2015, with the mandate from then Provost Joe Glover to make the core program work. Some days I regretted my interview question to Joe, which was, does the program have to look like it currently looks? And at times, even more regretted his response to my question, nope. In my first fall semester as associate provost, I listened and asked questions of college administrators, faculty, staff, students, and alumni about the Good Life course and the plan to add 2 additional courses for a 9-credit addition to every 8-semester plan of every FTIC student. Here's what I heard uniformly. While the Good Life course was spoken of with respect for its intent and respect for the dozen or so faculty instructors, faculty not teaching Good Life reported a deep desire to participate in sharing their passion for their research areas in such a signature program. Students, while a little less complaining about the additional course requirement, although there were a healthy number of them who did complain about that, the students expressed greater frustration in their lack of choice. This was forced on them, this one course. Other concerns expressed revolved around the large enrollments in the lectures of the Good Life course and increased time to degree after 9 additional credits were added to every student semester plan with no existing requirements entrained in them. What I gleaned in my semester-long campus conversations was that the disappointments expressed by faculty and students would exponentially increase if we were to proceed with the 9-credit-hour core requirement of 3 prescribed courses. Overlaid with these consistent concerns about the planned core program were results from the CIRU survey that we administer to our students every other year. I show here selected results of the 2015 CIRU survey of UF students. While 48% of first-year students reported that assisting faculty in their research as essential or very important to them, 52% of respondents across the entire population reported never working with a faculty member on an activity outside of their coursework. 39% of respondents reported never, rarely, or occasionally having a class in which a professor knew their name. As depressingly, 41% of respondents reported that their academic efforts were never, rarely, or occasionally increased because of high standards of a faculty member. Yet the statistic that truly punched me in the gut in 2015 was the 0.871, which was the average number of professors that first and second year students knew well enough to ask for a letter of recommendation. I had also recently become aware of the results of a large 2014 study of postgraduates conducted by the Gallup Foundation and Purdue University, very familiar to you all, I am sure. This data-supported study reported in part the essential role that faculty play in the current and future lives of our students. At that time, in 2015, I had come to wonder whether we at UF were reneging on our commitment to preserve the fire of our UF tradition of educational excellence, much less provide a relevant education for our students. Fueled by this layering of different forms of all this feedback, from the birthright of UF tradition of holding broad education sacred, the 2010 undergrad task force report's recommendations, the expressed desire of faculty and students for greater engagement, and the supporting statistics of the Sirius survey. I spent the winter break that bridged 2015-2016 mapping out a new vision for our UF Core program. After internal vetting, I unveiled a full proposal and report to campus in February 2016. You see here the cover of the report and an excerpt taken from the report's introduction. How we shifted from the first model of 3 courses to our current model with now over 200 courses was through a circuitous route of necessary productive tension. From spring 2016 to summer 2020, when UF Quest 1 became a requirement for all incoming FTIC students, truly a series of miracles followed. Just as captioned in this cartoon, describing the amount of good faith effort our administrators, faculty, staff, and students contributed in that time is very difficult. But slowly, as shown by this list of subset of activities hosted between 2016 and 2020, endless meetings, conversations, surveys, presentations, large small group gatherings, emails, and more, our campus dug in together and bit by bit wove the miraculous tapestry of UF Quest. We are still threading today. To date, 147 distinct UF Quest 1 courses have been proposed, approved, developed, and delivered to 19,612 students. The 109 UF Quest 2 courses developed so far have been completed by 11,181 distinct students. Well over 200 faculty from 69 units have developed and offered UF Quest courses to date, and students have responded positively in their course evaluations. Here's an excerpt of the UF Quest 1 and 2 course titles and questions offered just in this spring semester, just an excerpt. As you can see, the questions in which faculty engage students are difficult and diverse. For example, what does it mean to be free and equal? What does living in a secular age offer new opportunities and challenges for the perennial human quest for meaning? When is conformity good for me, and when is it not? What is romantic love, and how does it help us to understand ourselves and others? I've asked students who've taken that class to come and report that back to me, because I'd like to know the last question. Distillation of all the productive coming together toward building consensus on what exactly is the fire to be preserved in this vehicle of UF Quest yielded what we now refer to as the non-negotiables of all Quest experiences. We put our best faculty educators in UF Quest courses. All teaching assignments of UF Quest faculty are in load, thanks to the requirement that then Provost Joe Glover made during his UF's drive to hire 500 new faculty. Every UF Quest experience requires reflection by both students and faculty, experiential learning, and multidisciplinary content. We understand that the faculty-student relationship is singly most important to ensure lifelong student well-being, as the Gallup Foundation continues to show us. To this end, our UF Quest faculty are to know every student's name through smaller class sizes and high level of engagement. Our UF Quest faculty embody these non-negotiables of UF Quest by creating a classroom environment that instigates a transformational lifelong learning cycle rooted in a habit of reflection with faculty as expert mentor, giving students the courage to bring their whole selves into education, and thus turning the course content from an object of study to a subject of study, trying their newfound self and skills on for size out in the world, and returning through this cycle of mentored reflection and action again and again, hopefully for life. In our unfolding experience with UF Quest, we are coming to embody and re-understand that how we teach our students is as equally important, if not more important, than what we teach our students. And how we teach our students is rooted in our knowing them and our care for them. By our work in this program, we have gained a collective consciousness that our primary work as faculty is to give each figure in the photograph, as poet Robert Lowell wrote, his living name. UF Quest is now fully owned by our faculty. My fingerprints are off of it. And it continues to unfold. With its membership in the coalition, the current and future collaborative campus-wide efforts planned at UF are comprised of 3 pillars. First, launch Quest 3 and Quest 4. Second, efforts will focus on much needed and long overdue shaping of the greater narrative, explaining the why and the how of this program. First, to our faculty, staff, and current and prospective students and families, and then to our external partners, including employers, legislators, and the general public. Third, we continue to develop a formal assessment platform for UF Quest courses, and ultimately for the entire program. In this area, we're continuing to enhance a data mining platform, drawing from multiple sources, to provide us indicators of the extent of consistency of delivery and the impacts of the Quest non-negotiables, which now include the Gallup Big 6 student experiences. However, as I mentioned earlier, in all transparency, the future of the program is uncertain today. As is his right, and as is the right of any president, the new UF president has expressed a desire to possibly take the core program in a different direction. Naturally, as we await his decision, while we're still expanding the program to realize its full vision, we are anxious about its future. Sometime last semester, I shared my concern with Rick about this threat to our program that has taken us years of painstaking work to grow. He offered me encouragement that even if the program is terminated, we at UF have planted seeds that will, under the right condition in the future, sprout and flourish. His encouragement immediately drew me back to a story I taught my students in environmental engineering years ago. The story was written by French author Jean Giono and entitled "The Man Who Planted Trees." I believe the lessons in this story apply equally to the great work of UF Quest and of all institutions of higher education today, especially members of this coalition. You can actually purchase the short story or use the QR code on the slide, and a nice film, YouTube film, comes up, and it's narrated by the actor Christopher Plummer. And some of you, I realize, are too young to know even who that is, but he was wonderful. So it is a beautiful story. Giono's story is about a simple shepherd in the region of France where the Alps thrust down into Provence. Narrated by a man who happened upon this shepherd one day, the story tells of how the shepherd, over many years, with a fierce and quiet persistence, collects and plants acorns into the dry, withered, destroyed landscape. Despite human destruction during World Wars I and II, his sacrificial efforts yielded over decades miles of flourishing forest, gentle breezes, scented air, and sounds of water and life. The simple shepherd reminds us that humanity's capacity for creation is greater than for its own destruction. The first sentences of the story instruct us how to go about our important work of transformational education. For a human character to reveal truly exceptional qualities, one must have the good fortune to be able to observe its performance over many years. If this performance is devoid of all egoism, if its guiding motive is unparalleled generosity, if it is absolutely certain that there is no thought of recompense and that, in addition, it has left its visible mark upon the earth, then there can be no mistake. In describing the relentless commitment of the gentle shepherd's work of hope, Giano writes, "Creation seemed to come about in a sort of chain reaction. He did not worry about it. He was determinedly pursuing his task in all its simplicity." Our UF faculty over these past years and your faculty on your campuses are quietly and selflessly planting seeds in classes and programs where they nurture relationship with their students. I believe I speak for my colleagues here and back on our UF campus, many of whom are teaching Quest lectures today. We determinedly pursue the work ahead, while also reflecting on the unimagined transformational impacts these courses have already had on both our faculty and students. Besides receiving overwhelmingly positive student feedback about their Quest courses, since the first pilot ran in 2019, we have also observed a seismic shift in the unmeasurable aspects of the program as well. Faculty and students express a new language and attitude in describing and learning at UF, which I call the language of love. This language is not only expressed in comments from faculty and students, such as, "I've regained my love for my students and for teaching, and I love coming to class. I look forward to it." And also, faculty and students are engaged in the close work of UF Quest, speak of a deeper connection to the whole of humanity and where they may fit into it. This deeper connection in self-positioning is no better described, in my mind, than by a student who summarized her experience in her UF Quest 1 course entitled, "Why Tell Stories?" She wrote, "I learned that every story, no matter how different we think it is from our own, has deep-rooted ties to all aspects of being human. A poem, a short story, a novel, a film, a song, a speech, or a painting. Every one of these mediums provide us with stories that teach us about who we were, who we are, and who we hope to become as humans, who all have their individual stories to tell." So therein rests the grander, capital S story of UF Quest, the story within the story that the UF Quest program faculty and students are narrating for us. The little S story of UF Quest recounts the building of a program, one that aspires to shepherd students to seeing every individual in this world as fully human and discovering their own lifelong agency in serving others. But the capital S story of UF Quest is one that speaks of the beauty and true potential for transformation within higher education itself. When faculty encounter every student truly as a person, not as an object for use, they become fully human, paraphrasing philosopher Martin Buber. And in turn, our students become more fully human and more inclined to live forward in hope well into their lives. In light of results of a recent American College Health Association survey that reported 66% of college students expressing a sense of hopelessness, isn't giving hope to our students amid the complexity of the world today the most valuable gift higher education can provide them? I believe the work of this coalition is one of planting seeds of hope throughout our institutions of higher education. Hope not only for those of us besieged by internal and external negative scrutiny, but also, more importantly, for our faculty and students, who both yearn for a greater sense of well-being and connection in their lives. Just like our embarking on shaping UF Quest back in 2015, the mission of the coalition, in my belief, and of all of the work of its member in universities, is daunting. It's not only because building academic programs for student well-being and career readiness for life is hard work, it is, but also because the landscape seems at times at risk of becoming as dry, withered, and destroyed as that of Giano's Simple Shepherd in Provence. But Giano reminds us that there are times in life when a person has to rush off in pursuit of hopefulness. Rush off in pursuit of hopefulness. So I encourage us all, and I encourage you to go back to your institutions, and let's all get busy on that. And if someone tries to get in your way of planting seeds, my advice is that you tell them to rush off in pursuit of hopefulness. So thank you for your attention.
We have mics, I think. Yes, we can. Here we go.
I'm not exactly sure what my question is, but I have to first say that it's amazing the depth and sequence of what you've created.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
really...
And I would say attribute it to our faculty and our campus, and meet some of these wonderful people this afternoon. Thank you, Gerard.
And I think also the example of really taking something on big picture, long term, is really amazing. I
Yes.
think one question that arises probably is, how do you balance the depth of options in terms that you give students with some of the essential nature of some of the things that students must delve into, in their course?
Right. Well, one thing is we have the non-negotiables that I mentioned. So every class has to have that level of element, right? So that's one way, and we're assessing. And keep in mind, too, that we have other general education requirements, other courses. What the longer-term aspiration is that this becomes our general education program overall. So it envelops all of our gen ed courses. So they're still meeting the requirements and the standards, right, of our general education. But it's infusing in these courses, many courses, that standard that is, we're already finding, spilling over to the other courses. Hopefully that answers a little bit of the question. We have a long way to go, though. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I love the phrase necessary and productive tension.
Yeah.
I took note of that. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more of gaining the buy-in, especially from faculty. I think expanding beyond the traditional network of faculty champions to having, as you said, I think hundreds of faculty participate. If you could speak a little bit more about that productive tension and generating that buy-in.
My mind is going in many different directions right now. I'll try to keep it concise, and maybe we can talk later. Just like we were saying at our table 6, I think that we one of the the aspects is when you unveil something like that, there was an existential crisis that occurred. You know, the February of 2016 when I unveiled the report and went in front of faculty, and there was a natural, substantial backlash. It was about 1.5 to 2 years. Okay. So one of the aspects that's essential, and this is not calling attention to me because we had so many other people who stepped up, leaders have to learn how to absorb that and understand it and keep coming back into the room, right? Persistently visualizing the mission, right? While also saying, this is yours in the end, shape it. You know, and that's really what then happened. There were a number of task forces. One college formed its own and went parallel with the ones that I coordinated. Eventually, they came together, right? And what ended up is, I think what I mean by necessary is that what came out of all of that in that crucible was this: we don't need Lindner. Right? This is ours. We love this, right? So, but that's, from my experience, that's the only way you can get to it, especially at a large public. And just constantly coming back to the table, constantly, and communicating the mission. I will jump a question that some of you might have: what are the regrets or lessons learned? I very much regret, and we're focusing on now, as I mentioned, the communications marketing piece. Marketing, what is that in academic programs, right? We didn't do that at the gate, and I think that's critical today, is getting out there the why this is important, why this stamps you as a Gayer, that sort of thing. And that helps a lot too in unrolling something like this. Yeah.
That's great. Very impressive about the 500 or so faculty with hundreds of courses now that you have a part of this quest. You know, I was thinking about scaling down. You know, people often talk about scaling up and make it successful, but what do you think could be the lessons for scaling down to a smaller campus where, you know, freedom of choice may not be there, but still, you know, students have ideas of taking, you know, different courses. So let's say you have, you know, 50 faculty or something like that. How would you make this program successful?
It's very possible you can scale it down using a similar model. You know, choose your smaller population, student population. You can have a specific population to participate in it. In terms of the number of courses, the way that we set the model up, if you noticed in the sort of the map, we had different categories or themes, like nature and culture is one, and war and peace was one. It didn't, and we still comply with that. So these courses fit into those categories, right? The idea is that we would hit the refresh button after a certain time period. Faculty would find new themes. You don't have to have so many courses in those categories, right? You can have one or two. In fact, I will tell you my idea that I launched to campus in 2016 is maybe limit to 5 courses, right? Because I was thinking, I got to assess all of these. You know, how in the world are we going to, you know, ensure this? That is a danger you run into with a lot of the course, having a large number. But I think the model fits a smaller scale as well, and possibly more manageable in the process. Yeah.
Angela, great work to you and your team. I'm over here.
Yes, I've got lights. Okay. Yes.
Really nice work. This
Thank you.
is hard stuff, and you've done a beautiful job. It is concerning, the direction that your president is saying he'd like to take this in, and I imagine if it was a good direction, you wouldn't be concerned. And I have to ask, maybe we'll call it the elephant in the room, I've often thought in the last couple of years about my colleagues down in the Florida and other states. It must be so hard when you are talking about these really important values and you're up against this, you know, you're trying to push this boulder up a hill, and it's probably a longer conversation that I'd love to have with you or your colleagues, but how do you deal with that? And I don't know if this action by your president is a part of that. I imagine maybe.
Yeah, and I can't say that is the case. I'll just put it that way. So just the sense that a program we have been working on and developed deep relationships ourselves among the faculty. I will tell you the faculty that were the most vehement and mean are best friends now. And so that's what it takes. How we deal with the overall landscape, none of us are happy. I was telling Dom earlier this morning that many of us skipped the anger stage and went straight to mourning and grief, because there's very little we can do right now, and because there's a galvanization of the many layers in the state, but we are still doing incredible things, and we are problem solvers. So I think most of us are looking at this, okay, scratching our heads, how do we get to a place where we're proud again, right? And that supports our original intention in higher education, coming to higher education. So it again requires just what we learned in Quest and continues to teach us, sit at the table and have dialogue. That's kind of where we are right now, right? So we can't perpetrate the same kind of behavior. And a lot of this is, we repeat all the time on our campus. So, and don't forget about the heart, right? If we lose our ability to love, we're done, And I would just say love put Quest together, right? That's not very tangible for a lot of people, but that's how we have to live and move on our campus. And they're part of our community, and we're trying to come to some resolution there. It isn't easy, but I always go back, we have our students. And that's always the saving grace every morning. Okay, they are more and more brilliant every year, and so they're going to help redeem us. I truly in belief of that. Thank you.
We'll do one more question over here.
Yeah. Hello, Angela. Thank you for the great presentation. I have a quick question regarding the timeline. So if I understood well, it took 2 years from moving. For you to move from a pilot to launching the course university-wide, right? More or less.
More or less, yes.
So, and you mentioned student, let's call it resistance, right? How did you why did you decide to launch the course and make it mandatory to, on everybody versus maybe have it optional for students to take? I'm sure. Right. With 19, I don't know what the student body is, the number, but it's thousands of students. I'm sure there would have been enough students to take the courses, even if it were made optional. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. I think if you ask some folks on campus, is because Lindner's an idiot, right? And keep in mind, I had talked about, we had already shifted to a core model for all first-time in college students, which was what is the good life. So we already had that in place. That took a lot of heavy lifting of my predecessors, right? And I will just say in this time of Lent when, we're reflecting and confessing, I didn't like all of those predecessors who set up those programs. I am so grateful. I've written letters to them now. So we all are transformed, okay, as we move forward. So we already had it set up that every student. So if we were to back off to, okay, we're going to have a small scale, we probably would have lost the ability to have a core program, right? We were pushing the envelope a little bit at that point with our state legislature. There was a lot of lobbying against our being able to offer unique courses, and that 9 to 12 credit hours was bumped down to 6. the following year. There are a lot of Gator haters out there, and especially in the state of Florida, who were lobbying. We don't want them to have such a special education, for students, and among others. So we had to be strategic, and we're holding on to this, right? And then so we're going to go full force. But we did scale up the number of courses in the pilot, and trialed them and perfected them as best as we could. But it's a really good question.
Yeah, and thank you very much for all of your questions. I wish we had a lot more time. Thank you, Angela, for your presentation.